Right. I think we can now move on to the start of a system of classification of the suttas, of the Cittas, into 89 different kinds. And to begin with, you should have table 1.2. 1.2 shows 12 kinds of citta classified according to its most prominent root. So you have numbers 1 to 8. The root is greed or Lobha. 9 and 10, the root is hatred or Dosa. And 11 and 12, the root is Moha, ignorance. Everybody got that? Okay. Now, there are some variables. First of all is the feeling that arises with the citta. I know the Pali word is Vedana, translated here as feeling. It's not really the complex emotion that we usually associate with the word feeling. It's more like a sensation, a bare sensation. So the sensation arises with the citta having been in contact with whatever object has prompted the arising of the citta. And we can distinguish between physical sensation and mental sensation. Physical sensation can be either pleasant or unpleasant. Mental sensation can be either, again, pleasant or unpleasant, or neutral. And then the citta can also be classified according to its, whether it depends, it's associated with wrong view. Wrong view could be that things arise without a cause, that good actions do not produce good effects, bad actions do not produce bad effects. That's denying the doctrine of karma. That you can also have the wrong view that there is no hereafter, that you support the doctrine of annihilationism, or the opposite, you support the doctrine of eternalism. These are examples of wrong view. And then there's...
Just something came to my mind. When you say about good action and bad actions, do you refer to intentions of those actions?
Yes. The Buddha said it is cetana, intention, which I call karma. So you've got actions of thought, word, and deed, and if you set off with a pure intention, that is a wholesome action. If you set off with a bad intention, that is an unwholesome action. That is the function of avidya, not knowing. not seeing things clearly. Moha or avidya, likened to a cloud, obscuring our vision. We can't see things correctly. And because of that, we go down all sorts of wrong tracks and cul-de-sacs and things. You can be deluded into thinking that you're doing something good.
So that's a good intention, is it?
Well, not really, because you may think it's good intention, but in fact it isn't. So it's not really, it's not as serious as setting off with a bad intention, but it's still not right intention. Yes. When the Buddha talked to his son Rahula, he said it's like a mirror. Reflection. Before you perform an action, reflect on the likely consequences of the action that you are thinking of performing. Will it be beneficial to myself, beneficial to others, beneficial to both myself and others? And depending on whether the answer is yes or no, you carry it on, or you stop. The whole of Buddhist ethics is based on the principle: don't do to others what you would not like others to do to you. Well, this is where the Abhidhamma should help you to see things clearly. Sometimes a bit of muddled thinking goes on. Oh, I couldn't bear to see him go on any longer. Well, that's your problem, not the problem of the person who's suffering.
But doesn't it go against the first precept anyway?
Well, you can say that. But this is a very contentious subject we can debate all evening. But as I think you may see very soon, at the moment of the killing, there has to be an unskillful state of mind. There may be compassion beforehand, there may be compassion afterwards, but at the moment the decision is taken to terminate a life, there is aversion in the mind, aversion to the continued existence of that being.
I think that really is the point. That is why some doctors don't want to do it, because no matter what the next of kin thinks, it's not the next of kin who is actually performing the act. It's somebody else has to do it, and that person has to come up with a bad thought in order to perform that act. So poor doctor ends up with getting the wrong
What happens if the person is actually chosen? My mother did, in fact. What happens if they actually choose to not want to carry on? And it's not your decision, it's their decision.
Yeah, but you have made the decision to end the life, isn't it?
So
well, they've made their own decision, but they can't.
But the person who is dying made the decision.
Well,
yeah, but the thing is that person is not acting on it himself or herself. You are trying to get an external agent to perform that. So that is the thing which is not right.
Sorry, I think we have to avoid this any further, because we could discuss this for days and days and still not reach agreement.
Can I ask one question about what you've just talked about? Because the feeling of pleasant, unpleasant and neutral, because I was very struck by this idea that with greed you experience joy, because I experience a lot of joy in my life, and it made me think actually it could be because I'm very greedy and attached to the sensuous, samsara that I live in, yes, but I love life. And I was thinking that joy is actually a very wholesome cetasika, or however you say it, a mental state, isn't it? Citta.
Yes, at this point, the Pali word is Vedana, or sensation. But you are right that the word piti, or joy, is a highly developed state of mind which is wholesome.
So it's a different type. This
This is
is
Vedana, not
Vedana,
piti.
unwholesome.
Well, usually because it results in some kind of attachment or aversion. If it's pleasant, we are attached to it. If it's unpleasant, we feel aversion.
Because joy and equanimity as feelings are both linked to greed. And it's interesting because both those piti and equanimity are considered as wholesome cettasika states.
Yeah, there again, this word equanimity, the word is upekkha. There are really two levels of equanimity. The highly developed state of one of the fourth of the four Brahma Viharas. That's a very, very highly developed state, very pure state of mind. This we're talking about is more like just indifference, not caring one way or the other.
So actually it would be better if we use different words to distinguish the greedy joy, yum and
Would you please tell Bhikkhu Bodhi to change the translation? Yeah, thank you. So we have variations of the sensation, the association with wrong view, or dissociation from wrong view. That means not necessarily right view, but no longer any wrong view. And then another variable is prompted or spontaneous. Some actions we do without premeditation. We do them without any kind of without any hesitation. No prompting. Prompting can come from within us. Deliberation, shall I do it, shall I not do it? Or from outside. Something say, go ahead, do it, or don't do it. So, if we give you a few examples, maybe this will become a little bit clearer. Number one, the citta is rooted in greed, in Lobha. And so, with a pleasant feeling, with the view that there is nothing wrong in stealing, a boy spontaneously steals an apple from one of the burrows here in the high road. So it's rooted in Lobha. He wants the apple. He feels happy about doing this. The view is wrong, so he doesn't think there's anything wrong in stealing the apple. And he does it spontaneously, without any kind of consideration or forethought. The second of these cittas is the same as the first one. So, again, rooted in greed, with a happy feeling, again, having the view that there's nothing wrong in stealing, but this time the boy has prompting. That means either he thinks about it, shall I, shan't I, or he's egged on by a friend who says, go ahead, Go on, do it. Take that apple. Nothing wrong with it. Just, pinch this, take that. That's fine, that's fine. Then the third kind of citta and the fourth kind of citta are similar to number 1 and number 2. So they're both rooted in greed. There is a pleasant feeling, but in this case there is no wrong view. And in number 3 there is no prompting, and in number 4, yes, there is prompting. And then numbers 5 to 8 are exactly the same as 1 to 4, except the feeling is now indifference. So every kind of unskillful state of citta which is rooted in greed or lobha must be one of these first 8 kinds. You can't have any other kind of citta which is rooted in greed apart from these 8. Numbers 9 and 10, now the root has changed. The root is dosa, hatred or aversion. In both cases, the feeling or the sensation is one of displeasure. It's associated with aversion and it can be either unprompted or prompted. So in this case we can say in case of number 9, with a mind filled with hatred, the root of hatred or anger, a man, the mind is filled with aversion, and a man kills another spontaneously in a fit of rage. So there's no prompting. That's number 9. Number 10 is the same, except there is prompting, which means he premeditates the action, or he's egged on by somebody else. When the action is unprompted, it's more intense than when it is prompted. So any unskillful action which is rooted in dosa or hatred must be either number 9 or number 10. And then the last pair, this is rooted in delusion or moha. Moha has already been present to a lesser extent in the first 10. But here there's just pure moha. There's no lobha or dosa, just ignorance or delusion. In both cases, there's a feeling of indifference. In one case, it's accompanied by doubt, and in the other case, accompanied by restlessness. So we can think of a mind filled with delusion or not knowing, accompanied by or associated with doubt, vicikiccha, uncertainty. Somebody doubts the enlightenment of the Buddha, or doubts whether the dhamma is any use, is it effective or not. And then number 12, here the predominant quality is restlessness. That means the mind is so distracted that it is impossible to concentrate on anything. So, for example, you take the act of killing. Killing is normally done with numbers 9 or 10, with the root of hatred or aversion. Stealing could be done with any of the first 8, because it's rooted in greed. Lying or slander, that could be any one of the first 10 of these cittas, whereas harsh speech is more likely rooted in hatred, that's number 9 and 10. Empty talk, idle gossip, any of the first 10 kinds of citta. So these are ways of classifying unskillful, unwholesome states of citta according to their root and accompanying feeling, views and prompting.
What is wrong view in this context?
What is what?
Wrong view in the context of this table. What does wrong view exactly mean?
Wrong view?
Yeah, in the context of this table.
Well, we had the example of a boy stealing an apple from a fruit stall, thinking there's nothing wrong in that. We would say that's a wrong idea, a wrong view. He should know it is wrong, but he doesn't say that, he doesn't believe that. So in this case it's accompanied by wrong view. But there are many other kinds of wrong view as well, depending upon what particular action is being undertaken. But mostly actions rooted in greed would probably have the wrong view. There's nothing wrong with greed. It's okay to take this. It's okay to keep this for myself, not to share it with anybody else. So,
if a young toddler takes the apple,
if a young
toddler,
yes,
young, not a baby,
yes,
that person does not know whether it is right or wrong, so the wrong
right.
view doesn't come in.
No, so that is dissociated from wrong view. See, some of these Cittas are associated with wrong view, some are dissociated from wrong view. So yes, you get people who do things in ignorance because they don't know any better.
So then, in the case of the little child, the toddler, is that an unwholesome citta?
It's an unwholesome citta, but it's not as serious a matter as it is if he knew that taking the apple was an unskillful action.
So still unwholesome, but it's a relative.
Yeah.
Knowing or not knowing. Okay.
So that would go to adult who's ignorant as well.
Well, the adult really has very little excuse for not knowing that taking an apple is an unskillful action.
Like mentally not right person.
Well, that's also possible, yes.
But Rishan, most of these actions, when we say unwholesome, is from whose point of view? From outsider's point of view or from the agent's point of view? Because people mostly justify their actions. They got reason, they got excuses. They can come up with hundreds of answers. I did this because of that, because of that. But from outside view, as an outsider, we know that is done well. So whose view is important?
Well, the individual concerned has to be very clear, and most people are not clear in mind. Because they have a mind clouded with ignorance, they try to justify things which are wrong. But the Buddha has given us guidelines as to what is a good action and what is a bad action. And so we have here an objective measure. As I said, he talked to his son Rahula. Reflect before you perform an action, while you perform it, and even after you've performed it, about the consequences of the action. And yes, people will twist things round, unfortunately, and they will use some, well, generally will be regarded as a false argument to justify a wrong action. So that is because the mind is distorted by non-understanding or delusion, this word avidya, not seeing properly. So I think there are criteria which normal sane people would apply, which are supported by the Buddha's precepts. I mean, the Buddha asks us, please, to investigate his teaching and see what is reasonable. And when he gives us the first precept, not to go around killing, we can check this out. Does this make sense? Does this accord with what I think is reasonable?
So it means there is a logic behind all those precepts.
Oh yes, the Buddha didn't just invent them for the sake of inventing them.
What I'm saying is that there are certain things probably I as a person don't understand, but Buddha or Buddha's teaching will tell me, no, there is something you don't know, but it's good for you. Do it.
I think most people are able to examine the precepts and see for themselves if they are reasonable or unreasonable courses of action. If you think it's an unreasonable course of action, then I think you need to investigate matters a little bit further to see why is it you think these precepts are unreasonable. So the Buddha is giving us these recommended courses of action, which we can think about and see whether they agree with what we think is reasonable or not. But he has given us reasons why these particular precepts are valuable. They're not commandments. He's not going to punish us. But he says, if you do this, then the likely consequence is that. Therefore, I recommend you don't do this. But if you wanted to, you can experiment for yourself and see what happens.
I think part of the gentleman's question may also be related to the issue of the convention and probably the absolute conventional truths and the absolute truths.
Mm-hmm.
The point I'm trying to make it is that we live in a society where there is a conventional laws and rules of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Buddha's time, I mean, he was also born into a society where there was some conventions.
Mm-hmm.
So is Buddha taking the cue from that convention, what is right or wrong, what the law allows people to do and not allow people to do? Is that, is it coming from that, or is there something what you call an absolute truth? Doing things.
Well, I don't know about absolute truth, but we can talk about two kinds of sila, two kinds of ethical behavior, varita and charita. The first is what accords with generally accepted standards of behavior. So you don't have to be a Buddhist to find a recommendation that you shouldn't go round taking other people's property. I think you'll find that's pretty much world over. It is not regarded as a good thing to go around taking other people's property. So that's a kind of natural form of sila. But then there are other forms of sila which are formulated such as refraining from taking solid food after noon. That has no real ethical basis, but in the context of the Buddha's teachings, there is a good reason why he introduced that rule. So you've got two kinds of sila here. You've got one which is, you might call natural. It agrees with general public opinion that this is not a good thing to do, or this is a good thing to do. And then you have specially formulated rules and regulations which are there for one specific reason, but which are not universally accepted worldwide.
That was what I was talking about. That was my point. The things which make sense on those Buddhism context.
Yeah.
In Buddhist teachings. So I was wondering if there are any particular reasons or logic behind them.
Oh, very much so. The Buddha never made a rule without there being a reason. When he first started his order of monks, there were no rules. Every time somebody did something which was then realized as not a right form of behavior, then the Buddha would come up with a rule and say, right, from now on, you are exempt, because you didn't know, but from now on, I make a rule that we don't do so-and-so. And eventually, he got up to 227. So yeah, it must have been a pretty lawless bunch. But not all of these are actually matters of great moral issues. Some of them are more like forms of etiquette, polite behavior, that sort of thing. So the 227 rules are graded. Certain are so serious, immediate, permanent, expulsion. And some are much, much less serious, which can be dealt with without a big problem.
Just a little hypothetical question. Say if I spot someone trying to, with a gun, trying to kill a crowd of people, and if I see that, I kill that person to safeguard the others. I mean, I suppose I will suffer myself. So would I be suffering less, or would it be a good, a little bit of a lenient prisoner, or?
If you were here last Friday, we had a serious chat on that matter. There are certain actions that we have to do. But Richard mentioned about the intentions.
I gave an example there from one of the Jataka stories, which are the stories of the life of the Bodhisattva, who was developing perfections which would ultimately lead to the birth as Prince Siddhartha and becoming a Buddha. And on one occasion, he was the captain of a ship with, I think, several hundred passengers on board. And he came to know that one of the other passengers was intending to kill everybody. So now he had to think, should I kill this passenger? Should I take upon myself the unwholesome karmic consequences of my killing this one man, so that he is spared the karmic consequences of having killed several hundred people? Now, this is an example where he is developing the qualities of the Buddha, or Buddha to be, and he decided, yes, he would take the karmic consequences of his unskillful action in order to spare the other person the karmic consequences of his much more unskillful action. Well, we've got to the end of table 1.2. You should also have picked up table 1.3. Can you please try to bring that with you next week? And we shall work our way onwards. Thank you very much.